And we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so we were talking about your trip to New York and having to get rid of some art. What happened when you got to New York? You said you were brought out there because of a gallery. Right. How did that
go? Had a show. I think it was in the Meatpacking District. Had a two-man show with my friend. We both moved up from New York. I sold a painting before I even got to the show, and then she just kind of didn't like lock me in for another show, or just kind of got a little too loose. So then it sort of turns into survival mode. I thought she was going to I was going to be a feature artist, so I ended up starting my own space, and then she felt like I was one of our artists, and we went somewhere else, but she didn't simply talk to me seriously enough. So I, kept going and found a place to start having shows and having exhibits and a place to work, store my work without her. So that kind of fell through, which that is the cliche of artists going to New York. How serious is that person that's buying your work and showing your work? Are they going to help you figure it out and get through, or are they just going to drop you and suddenly your rent's like $1,200 and you got to figure out how to pay rent?
Right. So
it kind of fell apart like that. So you have to recover from that. It's about that.
You said that you did a mural in New York. Is that the only mural that you've ever done?
Actually, early on in my career, I was given an opportunity to create in my friend's corporate office. There was some sort of like previously left wood constructions on the wall from a hair design place. So I was asked to incorporate those into a wooden cityscape composition. So like in 1998, I completed this very large-scale found wood object public art installation. That was one of the early, probably the fourth thing I'd ever made. And that thing actually sat there for the owner of the building liked it enough that he built a protective wall, and then it was an office. My mural sat behind it until, unfortunately, Central City Concerns moved in. Didn't realize that mural was the perfect fit for their work, working with homeless people in streets and buildings, and so they ripped it out.
Oh man!
After 10 or 15 years of it being protected, and left it, Central City Concerns and came in and tore it off the wall. Instead of switching their office over here and then had a built-in public art that was already 15 or 20 years old at that point. So that was a little disappointing, but the New York mural came from somebody offered me there was a cargo box for an 18-wheeler sitting on the ground, which is sort of people store stuff in. I was given the opportunity to do a mural on it, so he gave me some spray paint. I basically went out and spent 40 hours and created it's sort of a New York City skyline painting. And it was after the 9/11 stuff happened. So, turned out to be pretty interesting. That sat there for at least 10 years, and then I guess it burned down a number of years ago. Unfortunately, I never signed it. I meant to put my name in, stencil, 4-inch stencil of my name, and then I never did. So that's when the mural or the rappers used it in the video. They didn't know who it was.
Oh man. So okay, tell us about your mural getting in a rap video.
A friend of mine called and was like, "I saw your work on VH1 in this video, in a music video." Oh, okay. So I looked it up. It was the artist is Nas. The song is called "Just a Moment," and I called the guy who originally got me the mural job, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw him out there filming." And I was like, "Well, they used my mural as the main element of their music video," and basically I called the Celebrity Justice television show. They decided to do a story on it. They sent somebody there to videotape the mural, and then they interviewed me down in Burbank. And I talked about rights of, public images and how much, what your protection is, whether anyone can use your images if you put it in the public realm. Found an attorney, and then they gave me like compensation for the work the 40 hours I'd done, which is what I wanted. So it turned out really good, pretty cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What kind of other work did you do in New York?
We're talking about art or?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, well, as I said, toilets. Is that where we're going? Let's see, what did I do? Well, I basically had driven across the United States, and so I was real eager to work with the subject of nature, even though I was now in a big urban environment. Alone in my studio, I was just started to work with the open-endedness and the endless variations of colors in nature. And so I had just freshly started into the rich subject matter that nature is for art. And so kind of early on, had to work on a series of large-scale nature paintings with canvas collaging and kind of just reflecting on the drive across the country and my own personal interest in nature.
What do you mean by canvas collaging?
I call it canvas collaging. It's similar to paper mache, I guess. You take an unsaturated raw material, it doesn't have to be canvas. You basically dip it in paint, or you can tack it down, or you basically paint it down and glue it down with paint. And as it's drying, you can shape it and create textures in that fabric. And then as it dries, it's locked into the shape you created. So it's a way of shaping your original surface, breaking away from the flat picture plane. It's like a relief sculpture. So you'd add those organic relief sculptural elements into a painting. Then you get to the point where you create a composition that's all white, or gessoed out. Then you have to add the color and paint the sculptural painting or whatever you want to call it. You have to resolve it with color. So it adds another layer, it sort of adds a sculptural dimension to a painting. And what I found is it just kind of opens the door to, if you're feeling like kind of frustrated or you're not going somewhere with your work, when you start using those techniques, incorporating, it just makes you break so free of what you're used to that it takes you in another direction, because it's like a parallel track to a traditional painting. It's mixing medium or collaging with wood or canvas collaging. It's a parallel lineage to an oil painting, and the history of oil painting and the assemblage, and then the history of found wood or found object art. Where I would find objects, I don't leave them in a raw form where it's sort of it's found. I would take the found art and then you incorporate it into a finished composition. So you actually don't know that it's found because you incorporated it into the work.
Right.
Rather than, it's less about being found, it's more about being resourceful and using available materials than leaving it at the raw where you get stuck talking about kind of like found garbage. It's trying to take it out of that realm and turning it into just another medium, but available medium that anybody can get a hold of.
When you're building up one of your pieces, do you have an idea of what you're doing with it, or do you look at it and discover?
Basically, you're working with your available resources, so that's the first step in the process. Is what you have to work with will dictate what your work's about, or what you can make work about. So basically, for me, if I use a sketch, it's sort of like, I consider it almost cheating to have it that worked out, that you're just kind of going through the motions. Where with my work, I have a rough idea that kind of what I'm working on. Sometimes it'll change as you're working, but a rough idea what the subject you're working on is, and then you're literally just in a meditative, contemplative state, making one, letting free to form decisions and improvisation of, you're letting things happen on the spot, and you're trying to resolve it as it's happening and keep the timing right. So you're discovering it, you're right on time with your decisions, and then you know when to quit. Kind of like that. It's, I guess it's processed. It's like a process-based thing of collecting materials, just being in the world and then taking in what's going on in the world, and then you come to your studio, and then you get your variables to set out what you have to work with, your colors, And within those constraints, you see what you can come up with.
Right.
And what I found over the years is by working with less, when you have more, you're able to handle more, and you can do more with more because you've learned how to use less. Whether you got like one green and a yellow, and it's like a limited palette exercise.
Right.
It helps you later in your color making decisions, because a lot of times people will get a big box of colors and you're pulling stuff and it's not working because you're kind of overwhelmed. But when you do more with less, when you have more, your efficiency's there, where basically the composition has a color scheme to it, and you're able to kind of hold it within the mood of the piece because you've learned the timing and over the years when to quit, when to keep going. Or a lot of times you go a little bit further, which could be going too far, but then and you either ruin it, but usually you actually just resolve it further, which is what I found. Kind of feels like risky move, but oops, that was actually the finishing touch. So those are the kind of things you try to discover when you're working.
Right on. What brought you back to Portland?
Being from Oregon and then living in New York, just how filthy the air was and the pollution and just the bad air and everything, I was just really wanting to just get back home, and I preferred to have stayed in Portland as a home base, but now until recently, in the last 10 years or so, Portland's really gone in, gotten a lot more attention, and everyone's realizing what a great place to live. I already knew that. I was trying to get home, basically, but once you get to New York, you can't really even afford to leave because you've got to pay your rent, and then so you have to actually escape and get out of there. And so in 2004, I got a U-Haul and started heading west. I got a lot of U-Haul stories. That's another category. That's another blog.
So, when you got to Portland, what happened? Did you just keep creating art? Are you showing in galleries?
Let's see. Got back to Portland. Basically, just had a detox for a while from being in that environment. Get some fresh air and fresh water. Get my strength back up to full speed. Basically, different times didn't have a studio, or found a place to live with a studio. Moved back in 2004, and then in 2006 I enrolled at PNCA for the second time, and got accepted again, and actually I attended